All right, welcome to a whole new episode of the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo. Baylin, week one was huge.
It was. There's a lot of good matchups. We had 6 games that we covered last week with predictions, and come to find out, we were correct on 4. At least I was correct on 4 of them. Did lose 2 of those, and we're going to touch up on those recaps in the beginning. But man, I'm just excited that high school football is back. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of moving parts that happen in the offseason, but there's no better time in the year than when football starts. And once high school starts, guess what's right next, Dan? College. And we're after college, NFL. So we're going to have some really awesome Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and potentially Mondays and Thursdays coming up for the next 3 or 4 months. So I'm really excited about that. But high school football is back. We're back. It was an awesome atmosphere at the Jones game that I covered against Cocoa, which was a crazy atmosphere, crazy game. You were at also a really high-scoring matchup, an affair with DeLand and Mainland. So a lot of great things. We've got record-setting performances. We got Dudes of the Week this week, which I'm really excited about bringing that back. You had the Orlando Touchdown Club Players of the Week as well that you can touch on later, Dan. But, man, high school football is back.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And first and foremost, I want to thank the Influencer Council for sponsoring the show. For anything NIL education related or representation, you can follow them on Twitter at Council NIL or go to www.influencer-council.com. Also, want to give a big shout out to Big Hits Live, but let's start talking about week one. And week one, you got half the states 0-1. You've got the other half of the states 1-0. It's what do you do from here? So let's get right into those games. And I'm telling you, we'll get started right now with the private schools. And you had Middle Tennessee Christian come down to Orlando and play Masters Academy. They beat the Eagles 41-13, Baylin.
Yeah, I was actually shocked with this matchup. I really like what Coach Kruzik is doing offensively with his dad running the offense, who was at Trinity Prep, put up big numbers with quarterbacks like Spencer Federer and stuff. So I was really looking forward to this, and I was kind of shocked by the amount of points that was scored in this game. I did a little bit more research on Middle Tennessee just to see who they were, and actually they're a pretty solid football program. So that's why Masters still remains in our top 4. We'll get into that a little later, but very shocking here. I did think that Masters was going to put up more points, especially, again, like I mentioned, the offense that Kruzik has, but great job to Middle Tennessee. They came down, took care of business, and probably had a really good road trip back home.
And then you have Foundation Academy, big numbers, beats Tenerac 62-6.
Yeah, so that score at halftime was like 54-3 or 6 or something. It was something crazy, out crazy. I was texting Michael Dove, who's the quarterback, the new transfer there from Horizon, who also did really good things there last year. Now he's at Foundation. He had 5 first-half touchdowns, 4 passing and 1 rushing, and he took a photo at halftime. I was clowning him because he came to training on Saturday, the day after this performance, and I was like, man, I thought the final score was like 54-6 or something, and he goes, no, coach, that was a halftime score. I'm like, then what are you doing taking photos? He's like, well, the coach told me I was done for the night. The game was pretty much over. So I thought that was pretty hilarious, but great job to Foundation. Way to kick it off. I think that, that's going to be a team we're going to be talking a lot down the stretch. I think with what they're doing offensively, with the addition of Michael Dove, just look for that program to really be back at the top of that class.
Yeah, private school number 4 ranked. OCP, big over Wildwood, 45-20.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one because of Cameron Curzon, the quarterback transfer from Boone. He had a really good day managing the game. They put up a lot of points. I was pretty excited about that part, and also being a pretty talented Wildwood team. I know they lost their best receiver to Jones, but that's still a talented football team over there. And OCP continues to handle business week in and week out, and look for them to have another great season, Dan.
And then you've got the First Academy, ranked number 5, beats Crescent City 27-13.
Yeah, Jack McKissick. That's going to be a name you want to remember. He's the quarterback. He split times with Tulip, but he had 3 drives in the first half, all ended with 3 touchdown passes. So I think they found a new quarterback, or at least they're doing some type of dual system quarterback. But I think Jack McKissick's going to be the guy that you're going to want to remember in that offense. Obviously, with a new head coach, he got his first win. That really counts. So that's really exciting about TFA. I'm really going to see how they push later on down the stretch with some really good opponents. They might have bumped out of our top 5 this week just because of strength of schedule or quality wins. But that's going to be another team we're going to cover a lot this year, and I'm excited that they got their first W.
I tell you what, let's get right into our public schools. Number 10, Wekiva knocks off Olympia 24-21.
Dan, Before I even touch on this, what did I predict?
You did protect the Mustangs. I will give you credit.
Finally, I got an upset correct this time. Wakaiva, I mean, if you watch statistically what their offense has done the last 3 games, yes, that also includes their spring game. Tyree Davis is playing probably the best football he's ever played before. He's averaging 4 touchdowns a game with 300 passing yards and over 400 all-purpose yards on the ground, including in the air. This is something we've not heard of at all with Wakaiva, and they're just racking up points. They pulled off this upset. Again, the hype train with Olympia. All these transfers, everybody's watching them, and they get popped week 1. It's going to take time for a bunch of talent to start meshing together, which is why we didn't have them so high in our rankings like other people may have. It does take time to build chemistry. These guys just popped up out of nowhere right before fall camp. That's just not going to happen against a great Wakaiva team and just come in there and start to dominate. Now, you will see Olympia get better, I think, throughout the course of the season, and then they're going to start to show themselves like, wow, they are a really good deal talented football team, which I still think they are. But right now, with all the things that are moving and all the different people in new positions and players and trying to mesh and gel, I just think that this was the right timing for an upset, and Wakaiva pulled it off behind the quarterback arm of Tyree Davis.
Yeah, and I tell you, Romello Ware for Olympia did have over 150 yards rushing in that game. How about number 8, Lake Minneola get knocked off by Manatee, 46-27.
I was very shocked about this, Dan. I was actually looking forward to Lake Minneola having another phenomenal year. Looking at them in the preseason and watching them over the summer, going to different camps, seeing how big their offensive defensive lineman is, and just the skill players that they have. With also Jacob Kanya coming from CFCA playing receiver now, I just think that they were so explosive and they got popped in the mouth. Dan, I was very shocked with this score. I know actually, if you looked at it early on, Lake Minneola controlled that football game. They were winning for most of the game until the second half, and Manatee just poured it on them. So great job, Manatee, coming over here to Central Florida, getting the W, going back to the West Coast with the win. But I was very shocked with this, Dan, and I do look forward to Lake Minneola bouncing back. And I know that there's now talk with Leesburg out there, and Eustis now 1-0, saying that you have to win to move up in the ranks. Well, at the end of the day, Lake Minneola has done nothing to move down in rankings as far as in Lake City and in that county. They still are the best team over there. They lost to a pretty good Manatee team, a team that's probably trying to get back on the rise. They've kind of fallen off over the last couple of years. They used to be a powerhouse from what I remember, but what a win for Manatee's program. But I would love to see how Lake Minneola bounces back, and don't be surprised, Dan, if they start beating Team 60-0 to really prove themselves.
No doubt about it. And, Coach Jaquez Green has been building that Manatee program for the last 3 years. And I saw them down at Suncoast Media Day a few weeks ago, and they're going to be a contender. But Lake Minneola, we both know, has a credible amount of talent on that team. How about the basketball season, or the basketball game of the year? Dr. Phillips goes down to Lake Mary 76-60.
Now, obviously, you guys know I train Noah Grubbs, and I am very connected with their family. And I remember getting a phone call from his mom at halftime, and I was covering the Jones game. And of course, I wanted to know what the score was. But when his mom called me, and at the time it was 48-20, I was like, hold on. Is that a final? She goes, no, there's still like 4 minutes left in the second quarter. I'm like, it's not even halftime yet. And sure enough, looking back at the tape, Noah Grubbs literally was throwing the ball all around DP's defense, which played cover zero all night with no blitz. It made absolutely no sense. He was having his day out there in the air, and 3 or 4 of their drives were in 2 plays or less. So we're talking big time touchdowns. And I think that's not really the surprise here, Dan. I think the surprise is a Rodney Wells defense giving up 76 points. I don't think that's ever happened in his whole tenure at Dr. Phillips. I don't even think they've given up that many points, honestly, in several seasons. They're talking 10 plus games total. And Lake Mary just completely dismantles Dr. Phillips' defense. Now, obviously, the score is respectable here, 76-60. Stanley Anderson had a game of his life, had 9 total touchdowns, 4 rushing and 5 passing. But at one point, the score was 76-40. Dr. Phillips had 40 points going into the half. That third quarter was completely all Lake Mary, just like the first quarter was when they went up 28-7. I'm very shocked, one, that both teams gave up this many points, but man, Rodney Wells' defense, I've never heard anything like this. 76 points, which is now a all-time county record with points combined and yards combined in a football game. Obviously, now Noah Grubbs has the all-time passing record for a single game at Lake Mary and touchdown record with 8 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure Stanley Anderson has every passing record in a single game, had Dr. Phillips and rushing record at quarterback. So many records were broken. If you guys were at this game, I'm sure you guys got all your money's worth, and probably stayed a lot longer than you would probably like to on a Friday night. But at the end of the day, what a game to start the regular season, Dan.
No doubt about it. Now let's move on. Apopka in a baseball game wins 2-0 over Ocoee.
I love what you did there. It's completely opposite of what we just talked about. This was probably, if not arguably, the most boring game I think someone's ever been to. I hear a lot of chatter on social media. I've been on Facebook and watching everybody just attack this Apopka offense and where are they? What are they doing? At the end of the day, we know Apopka's identity is defense. And again, they pitched a shutout. That's still impressive. I don't care what anybody says. It's still Apopka's defense. It's really hard to score, and they get the safety with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the ball game. So I know they had a touchdown called back off illegal catching. A receiver ran out of bounds on a 70-yard touchdown pass. He caught it, obviously scored, but it was called back on a penalty. But at the end of the day, Apopka's going to find their identity. But guess what they keep doing, Dan? They keep winning. So as long as they keep winning, they're going to stay relevant. Apopka's still not giving up points defensively. That's who they are, and that's where their identity lies. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to start rolling and start to get things going later in the season like they do every single year. So let's just pump the brakes on this baseball score. But it is still impressive for Ocoee to really shut down Apopka's offense single-handedly. I was making a joke. Oak Ridge scored more points against Ocoee in their kickoff classic game. So that's just something I'm throwing out there. But Apopka, they still get the W, Dan.
Yeah, and there's still Apopka talent, and like you said, it's going to take them a little while to gel on that new offense. But let's not forget these guys are been to the state championship 3 of the last 4 years. So Apopka's going to have plenty to go. But how about Michael McClendon, linebacker for Ocoee, sophomore?
Yes.
20 tackles in that game. That was kind of huge.
Dan, what's crazy, Dan? I just found out he's transferred from Lake Mary. He was at Lake Mary last year, and I guess his dad is now the defensive coordinator over there. So what a great get for Ocoee, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I tell you what, Ocoee's going to be fun to watch. How about the Battle of College Park? Bishop Moore and Edgewater. Edgewater squeaks it out 24-19.
Yeah, there were some things that I found out after the game that took place that I don't want to really get into because it's not really my job to really put it out there. But Edgewater was a little shorthanded this game, and Bishop Moore came to play. Bjorn Jurgensen had the game of his life, threw over 270 yards on an Edgewater defense. That's unheard of. Threw a couple touchdowns, one late there to make the score respectable. But Edgewater was in no way, shape, or form worried of losing this game. They were up 24-7, I believe, going into the fourth quarter. So they had control of this football game. But I will tell you, Bishop Moore does show a lot of promise and shows why they are number one private school ranked. I still don't think that any private school beats them in Orlando. They still have talent all across the board, and it's still a respectable score. At the end of the day, when you go on Max Preps or you go on our sites, 24-19 was the final, and Bishop Moore put up 19 points on an Edgewater team and only gave up 24. So that's still a win in our books for Bishop Moore. Great play to them, but Edgewater, I want to see how they continue to build on this momentum as they start to play tougher opponents in these next couple weeks, which starts this Friday against Osceola. So very intriguing. Obviously, rivalry games are always closer than what people want them to be. But at the end of the day, it's 5 years straight for the Eagles.
No, absolutely. And Caton Shields Dutton actually had a good game on the ground, I should say. All right. Rockledge goes into Bokie, and the Seminoles take care of business 22-13.
I thought this game was going to be a landslide for Seminole. I believe I called 21+ in this game. The Rockledge looked very bad in their kickoff classic, was down 38-0 at one point. I thought Seminole was going to light it up. They still get the W. Their defense still shows up, only giving 13 points to a really good Rockledge offense, in my opinion. But Seminole, I mean, this team just continues to find a way to win, just like Apopka does. They always find themselves up in the top tier of our rankings every single week. Why? Because all they do is win. So it's tough to bet against these guys. They're really well coached. They have a lot of chemistry. They have a lot of guys coming back, obviously with the addition of Carson, who threw a couple touchdowns in this game, and David Parks, who's now being used in his role as an athlete like a Tyson Hill. They're going to be very hard to stop later down the road, Dan, but I was very shocked at how close this game was. But at the end of the day, Seminole gets it done.
All right, Baylin, a lot of people in Daytona were very upset with you last week. Mainland takes care of business 43-31 over DeLand.
Yeah, I was wrong in this matchup. I did call the upset with DeLand. You were at this game. You were texting me back and forth. I was shocked at how close this game really was, and it was shaping up to be an upset until the second half happened. And TJ Moore, don't get it twisted. The kid is an elite talent, but the new quarterback at Mainland This kid is unbelievable. Murray, I actually trained him towards the end of the summer. Didn't even really know who he was. He came from Flagler Palm Coast, told me he was going to play Mainland. Until this game, I didn't even know he was a starter. And then I turn on the tape, and this kid was everywhere, scored 4 touchdowns on the ground. He's going to be something to watch throughout this year as a senior year. And of course, they put up 43 points on a phenomenal DeLand defense. That was pretty shocking. Both scores, honestly, Dan, if you could agree to this, is shocking to see how many points were scored in this football game against these two juggernaut defenses. I was thinking more along the lines of like a 17-14, 21-17 final. It was 43-31, Dan. This is pretty impressive offensively for both programs, which are both known for their defense. Both are also well coached. Let me get that out there. I don't know why Mainland thought I was saying that they're not well coached because I called an upset or because Darlington controls the clock like he always does with his single wing offense. But at the end of the day, we know why Mainland's up there in our rankings because they're the real deal. They have special talent, special coaching. They went to the state title game last year, lost up 10-0 at halftime. They're looking to repeat this year, get back there and get it done this year. So Mainland's a solid football team, just like DeLand is, and that's still a team to watch throughout this year, Dan.
No, absolutely. And again, very close game. Really, Mainland, every time they got ahead, DeLand would find a way to bounce back and keep it competitive. But in the end, Mainland, very big and physical. Defense played very well. A lot of great talent on both sides of that ball. And after the game, I had a quick interview with Coach Travis Rowland.
Hi, here with Coach Rowland. Coach, big win for the Mainland Buccaneers. 43-31 over a tough DeLand team. Seemed like your team had a little bit trying to get the cobwebs out in the first half. Normal circumstances in week one.
Yep.
But halftime, they looked really crisp coming out.
Yep, all the credit goes to our coaches. We had to hear a lot about who had the better staff. We took it a little personal. But we wanted to make sure we could come out, have a good plan, make a couple of halftime adjustments, come out and do a good job. But again, the coaches and the kids work hard, man. I'm blessed to be a part of it. Blessed that God chose me to be a part of Mainland High School, and just blessed to get another victory for this program.
Seemed like a big team win. A lot of guys touched the ball tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be us on offense. I mean, when you lose, I think it's 3,000 yards of offense from Ajay and James, it's hard to replace with 1 or 2 people. So we got a bunch of guys that are more than capable. I think we probably had like 5, 6 receivers catch passes. I think we had about 5 or 6. We had four guys run the ball tonight. So it's going to be that way all year. And it's a team. A lot of people want to put it about 1 or 2 people. This is a football team. And we just got to keep working and obviously work some kinks out. Great scheme. Thank God we only played during week 1. We don't have to see it anymore. We got some regulars offensive football.
I'll tell you what, that was a great win. And good luck next week. You got West Broward
coming in. They got a couple of explosive wideouts. So we're going to play ball there. And, we're excited about it. Going to be at home. Hope Daytona is proud of what we've done and continues to come support us, man. Operation Go Back is in full effect.
All right, good luck next week.
Thank you.
All right, so again, Mainland comes away, and Dennis Murray, you said quarterback, had 2 passing, 2 rushing touchdowns. Finally, the game of the week. Cocoa Tigers come to Orlando, and the Battle of Cats goes to the Cocoa Tigers, 22-20, Baylin.
Yeah, they had a great comeback. They found themselves down 19-7, 16-0 early off of a safety, a couple turnovers. I was really impressed with how much physicality Cocoa came in with Jones. I thought Jones was obviously the better team in my opinion from top to bottom, but Cocoa really came with a good game plan, kind of switched it up on Jones. They thought they were coming out in man, and they played pretty much zone coverage the entire night, kept everything underneath them, and never let a guy really beat them deep, which is what, Jones capitalizes on with their speed on the outside. So Jones did, a good job, maintaining and composing themselves. They found themselves in the red zone 4 times and only came away with 1 touchdown. So, great job to Cocoa stopping them, but Jones still forced 3 turnovers, got a pick 6 that kept him in the game early. And then they put in Darion Coleman to finish off the second half. Trevor Jackson really struggled in this football game, and I don't know if it was just, again, the new offense, what I talked about last week, learning signals or whatnot, but Darion came in, looked very comfortable, drove the team down to the 6-yard line, ended up fumbling the ball, which hurt them, which I had an opportunity to take the lead. There was a play where he pump faked, and when he pump faked, the kid jumped in the air, but his foot hit the football, and then Coco picked up and ran all the way down to the opposite 20. But at the end of the day, he looked really good, had an opportunity to win the game. They threw a Hail Mary at the end, and Coco ended up intercepting it, but it was a very close call. And again, failed 2-point conversion and a couple field goals for the Cocoa Tigers, and they pulled out with a 2-point win over Jones to start off their week. And this is a big win for them because now they have 2 juggernauts back to back. We're talking Venice this week and then St. Thomas Aquinas. So Cocoa ain't running from nobody, and they get a very big win against Jones, where they could have found themselves 0-3 to start the year. So great job to them. And then back to Jones. It's like we're back to the drawing board at the quarterback position. Do they start Darion Coleman this week in Maryland, or do they go with the 4-star that just committed to Ole Miss? It's going to be a very interesting topic we're going to talk about, but I know both are going to play regardless because I know how Coach Will does it. But, they got to find themselves an offensive identity first and then build on that so they can really make a deep run, because I think this team has enough talent. Both these teams have enough talent to go out and get the job done and win state.
No doubt about it. And, Cocoa, like I said, they're loaded with talent. We saw that. And you got to give a lot of credit to Brady Hart, sophomore quarterback. Coach Ryan Schneider knows what he's doing, and he's going to be something to watch. Well, guys, when we come back, we got Chris Hayes with the Orlando Sentinel. Let's watch the recap of that game. We'll have Chris.
No.
All right, welcome back to the Central Florida Scoreboard Show right here. I'm Dan LaForest. That's Baylin Trujillo. And welcome back, our guy, Chris Hayes with the Orlando Sentinel. Welcome back, Chris. It's been a long year for you, man. We're glad you're back and you're healthy.
Feels great to be back, and just in time for football season. It was perfect timing.
I tell you what, Chris, you were up in DeLand with me for that DeLand-Mainland game. What are your thoughts on where both programs are going into the 23 season?
I thought Mainland really handled themselves quite well. Of course, you guys have already spoke about L.J. McCray and the quarterback DJ Murray. Those guys were phenomenal on Friday night, and to the credit of DeLand, they never gave up, and they made it a game late with a late 100-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown. But Mainland just kept pounding it, and they scored again after that. So the game was never really in jeopardy for the Bucks, but DeLand showed some fight. And I like TJ, the DeLand quarterback. He's a solid prospect as a college prospect, but DeLand just really, they shut quite a bit of the facets of DeLand's game down, especially when you talk about Javon Ross. He had a big first half, but they started double teaming him in the second half, and he didn't really get loose.
Baylin?
Yeah, no. What? Obviously, I always don't want to say this, Chris. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're talking and you're healthy, and that's like the most important thing. We've been following your journey, and you're the man when it comes to this, and kind of laid
Thanks.
the foundation of high school football and what that means to all of us. So, I'm glad that we're talking high school football together, and I'm glad you're doing okay and the family's okay, and again, you're on the sidelines again, which is what's important. So. Talk about some of the players. I know you just came out with the top kids in the class of 24. Talk about some of the ones that stand out to you that you're looking forward to covering this year.
When I'm evaluating talent for the Super 60, I look for guys who really stand out on the field, and LJ McCray did that on Friday night. He was a beast. I think that's what I wrote in my column today. And then Sincere Edwards has had obviously a great 4 years of high school football, but he's right up there with the top of the guys. And DeAndre Robinson has his ups and downs, but he's a solid prospect. He's going to Texas. I think Sincere's headed to Pitt. McCray hasn't decided yet, but those guys are, looking really good as the top of the Super 60. But Friday night, I saw some action from like Anthony Rozier of Wekiva. He had a great game. Like you said earlier, Tyree Davis, the quarterback of Wekiva, also had a great game, as did the receiver, Bennett. I can't remember his first name, but he played very well. McClendon at Ocoee obviously had 23 tackles. That's crazy, a crazy number. And there's just a lot of good things going on out there, and a lot of talent to uncover, because I think there's some guys that aren't getting the attention, but they will.
Oh, no doubt about it. One of the things that's always impressive beginning of the year is we always expect defenses to be ahead of the offense, but we're seeing complete opposite. And the numbers that we see, it's very difficult to sit here and take a look at one player of the week. How do you factor all that in? And that's something that Baylin and I look at a lot of different factors. But I think you're right. I think there's combine information. I think there's off-season training information. But at the end of the day, it's what you do on the field.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And I was just talking about seniors mostly, but with the exception of McClendon. But there's some really good underclassmen out there. And what I noticed in the Super 60 was the senior class, there's a really dominant factor when it comes to safeties in the area. Defensive backs have really picked it up in the past couple of years, and we have some great. Like the guy that really stands out to me is George Brown at Jones. He had a pick six the other night. He's just slowly and progressively turned it on and quietly become possibly the best safety in the area, arguably. And then Kai Bates and Xavier Mincy at Mainland. There's also Jalen Howard at Rockledge and Brandon Jacob at Evans. There's some good guys in the defensive backfield.
Baylin?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I'm watching everything you're doing with these guys, and I'm very happy with how you're handling the rankings and stuff. And I know that there's some talent. There's actually a defensive end at Winter Park. I think he's going to be the real deal. He transferred there from Boone High School. I know he had a pretty big game. So, again, you covering all these guys and giving them attention, again, it's helped with recruiting. I know that, a lot of the coaches that I deal with, they reach out and they like to look at things and rankings and stuff like that where kids stand. And, your list always is at the top of what I send to these guys. So I appreciate the time that you do put in with these athletes. I feel like they should give you more recognition when it comes to that stuff, because at the end of the day, you're changing lives because you are giving them the recognition, and people are knowing who these kids are week in and week out through the Orlando Sentinel. So I appreciate you, Chris Hayes, for doing that. And I do want to ask one question. Of course, I'm going to ask this question. What quarterback in this area that you've been seeing or covering that stands out the most? And it could be in any classification, but I just want to know from your research. Obviously, I train a lot of these guys, but I want to know who sticks out to you the most.
Well, I got to tell you, Noah Grubbs, I saw him last year for the first time, and he was impressive in some makeup duty or like relief duty last year against Lake Brantley, but he was very impressive then as a freshman. Now he comes out and throws 8 touchdown passes in his first game as a sophomore, and that's incredible. There's some really good senior quarterbacks out there, but wow, they have a long way to go match up with no grubs.
Chris, one question. One of the things that I've kind of noticed, and this is just an observation, it seems like there are more 4-star kids than we've seen in the past. With the challenges with college scholarships being available, especially Power 5 with the transfer portal, and we're still about 2 years before we get rid of the COVID hangover with a lot of these scholarships. What are the challenges that we're going to see because a lot of this talent is being evaluated at such a high level?
Yeah, and it's also kind of convoluted because of the transfer portal, and college coaches would rather take a guy who's been at a university for a year or two instead of take a chance on a freshman coming out of high school. But that's the recruiting process right now has just gotten even more difficult for a lot of guys. Even though there are 4-stars, they're still scrambling to find their home, and it's obviously frustrating for the kids. I've talked to a lot of kids about the fact that in the past few years, Orlando has really picked up as far as talent. Like back in around the 2010 era, there was only a few, really high-level prospects like Ha Clinton Dix and Jeff Driscoll, Matt Milano, guys like that. But it's really picked up when we have like 6, 7 4-star guys right in the Orlando area. That's just amazing from what it used to be.
No doubt about it. And, it just seems like with everything going on with the addition of NIL, what are your thoughts on NIL after we've seen it for a couple of years, how it's being, I guess, used in the recruiting process? Is it a distraction from picking the right school?
I think it's a huge distraction. It's obviously not very well maintained by the NCAA. So it's kind of a free-for-all, in my opinion. And I wish it wasn't something they used in recruiting, but it obviously is. And it's a huge recruiting tool for colleges. And if they can promise a guy X amount of $1 million to come sign with them, then, that's going to turn some heads and sway players to sign with the teams that have the money. So it's really become difficult for other teams that don't have the money to compete in the recruiting levels that these other teams are.
I was at the Orlando Touchdown Club meeting this past Monday, and we had Andy Staples in from On3, and he was talking about the Justin Rosado situation. Was it Justin Rosado? Who's the kid at Florida? Justin Rosado is actually a Seminole. Who was the kid at Baylin? Who was the kid at Florida?
Jaden Rashada.
Jaden Rashada. That whole situation about $13 million over 4 years, it was actually exaggerated to some extent. It was exaggerated from a collective standpoint. They had somebody in that collective, and they had people actually negotiating that deal that had no authority. And I just think that, again, I saw an interview with Deion Sanders talking about how the collectives are not making it easier on the recruiting process, but yet that's where 99% of the money's coming from. Brand deals are a 1% club. And again, I think what we're seeing is, my fear is we're starting to see players that are chasing the dollar signs instead of looking at the big picture of, do I go here or do I go here? Because it's a better fit for me to get that possibility of going to the next level at the NFL.
Exactly. And I think Coach Prime has, he gets a lot of flack, but he really is somewhat intelligent on the whole realm of, the aspects of recruiting and NIL's impact on that. I think originally it did start as NIL being kind of a brand sort of monetary thing. It becomes so much more with the boosters involved and everything. And it's really, really kind of mashed up the whole recruiting process. And I really think the NCAA has to step in, make some guidelines, make even maybe some monetary limits, because when you're talking $13 million for a guy coming out of high school when you don't even know if he's going to pan out, that's just crazy.
All right, so we're getting ready for week 2, Chris. Where are you going to be this Friday night?
I haven't decided yet. I like the Oviedo game. They're playing Orange City, and that might be a good place to go because Oviedo put up 60 last week, and then Orange City University, they looked good against Haggerty. So that could be a good matchup. I might want to check that out just to see some of those Oviedo kids and some of those Orange City kids. They got some good talent on those rosters.
Well, I tell you what, Chris, we're going to take a quick break. You going to stick around and go for Dudes of the Week with us?
I can do it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to have the Dudes of the Week. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Chris Hayes with the Orlando Sentinel and Baylin Trujillo. And let's go right into our Dudes of the Week. We got to remove that and bring it up. And let's start with our offensive dude, Baylin. You know him pretty well.
Yep, Noah Grubbs from Lake Mary. This was a tough decision. There were so many great offensive performances, but it's obvious when you set records and you get a big W, putting up 76 points against a Dr. Phillips team led by Rodney Wells. That is really impressive. You know, Stanley Anderson had an opportunity to win this, win this title, per se, if he would have came away with the victory. But because Noah threw 8 touchdowns for 528 yards, which are both school records, again, for most touchdowns in a single game, which was 8 by Noah. He beat, I believe, Gunnar Smith, who had 7 at one point, and then 528 yards passing in the air. Kid lit it up. He deserves every single accolade that he's been getting this week. I believe he was also the Orlando Touchdown Club Player of the Week as well. So he's going to be able to join you September 11th. Hopefully I'll be there as well to celebrate that. But man, 8 touchdowns. And to be honest with you guys, I was communicating with his mom this entire time that after halftime, he threw 8 touchdowns with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. I was really hoping he beat Tucker Israel's record of 10 touchdowns that night. Selfishly, of course, I was hoping they would still throw the ball. They actually did on their next possession, and Logan Cook dropped a wide open post that would have been his 9th touchdown. But after that, they just went conservative and ran the ball, which rightfully so at that point. But man, selfishly, I was hoping that Noah did break the all-time state record of 10 touchdowns, again, held by Tucker Israel from Lake Nona under Paradiso. But 8 touchdowns, again, for Lake Mary's Noah Grubbs, which is why he's our dude of the week for week 1.
All right, let's get right into our defensive dude of the week. Chris, you and I are at this game. It is LJ McCray, the defensive end from Mainland. He was dominating.
Yeah, he was wreaking havoc. And the first thing off the bat, like that first series, he was batting down passes. He was blowing up the offensive line. He's so quick, has great hands, and he's so big. And the thing that really stands out about him is he is fast. He is really fast for a 6'6", 265-pound guy, and not many people can contain that guy.
Baylin?
Yeah, I believe that this kid has the potential to not only make an impact in college football, but we're probably going to see him in the National Football League if he continues this streak. There's several players that have the if factor, and LJ McCray obviously showed why he's one of the best against and arguably one of the best offensive linemen that they're going to see all year, and completely dominated them from start to finish. And one thing I like about him is he plays the same how he starts and how he finishes the game. Some people lose gas, some people get gassed out or take themselves out. This guy wants to play every single snap, and it shows, with his stats in this game. I mean, it's unbelievable. And against a team like DeLand, it's definitely put him in that category of why he's one of the best, if not the best, defensive end or defensive tackle in this entire area. So LJ McCray is our defensive dude of the week for week 1 at Mainland High School.
I'll tell you, there was a lot of people with a lot more stats, but 10 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 2 pass breakups. But the thing that really triggered me was the fact that he was just dominating.
And he doesn't come out of the game either. He plays both ways, plays tight end. And after the game, I talked to him about that. He said he wouldn't have it any other way.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Now we got our special teams, dude. And it is Larry Miles, sophomore wide receiver out of West Orange. He had a punt return for a touchdown and a kickoff return for a touchdown. I tell you what, this kid is electrifying, Chris.
Yeah. It's got some good.
It's sad. It's sad to see this, but it's also awesome. You know why? Because it's against Oak Ridge High School. You know, he's completely shredding Oak Ridge special teams wise. This kid's a phenomenal athlete, but hopefully he can have this success this week against Apopka. But again, he did this against Oak Ridge, my alma mater, so this one hurts, Chris.
Yeah, it's weird. I first started doing the rankings right after your senior year, I think.
Yeah.
At Oak Ridge. Yeah, this kid has some swivel in his hips, and he's really breaking free on his own because he just left the Oak Ridge guys diving.
Well, I tell you what, that's our dudes of the week. We want to thank Chris Hayes for showing up and hanging out with us today. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about week 2. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show, and we'll be back right after this. All right. Well, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That's Baylin Trujillo. And Baylin, it's time for the new top 10.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. Dan, how about you rattle them off for us?
All right. Let's start with the public schools. Oviedo makes its debut in at number 10, followed by Winter Park. Wekiva moves up to number 8. Apopka drops down 1. To number 7. Lake Mary goes up 1 spot to number 6. Edgewater falls 1 spot to number 5. Jones falls 3 spots to number 4. Cocoa moves up to number 3. Seminole number 2. And the number 1 team is Daytona Beach Mainland.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid top 10 there. Obviously, there's some conversation about Cocoa being number 1 because they beat Jones, who was formerly number 1. But as we know, guys, let's be honest. Even in college football rankings, just because you beat the number 1 team doesn't automatically make you the number 1 team in the entire country or the entire city or whatever you want to call it. Okay, you got to earn your stripes. Obviously, they play Venice. You beat Venice, you're really solidifying your resume. That's going to make you obviously go up. And then you got St. Thomas Aquinas. So those are some tough football games that they decided to schedule. So again, we're going to see how that all plays out. Mainland completely proves why everybody has them pretty much number 1. We were actually the only team, or actually only high school show that did not have them week 1 as number 1. So they had to earn it, and they did that, and Jones lost to Cocoa, so which is why they got number 1. Seminoles right there screeching, and they're going to have a tough test these next couple weeks as well. So our top 4 or 5 are pretty solidified. Apopka, they dropped 1. They weren't impressive offensively. They're going to have to do some things. And then on the flip side, Lake Mary really showed themselves offensively, which is why they switched spots with Apopka. But obviously the 2 teams that we're new to talk about is Winter Park and Oviedo. Oviedo, like Chris Hayes just mentioned, scored 60 points on Lake Brantley, which is pretty impressive. The only thing that concerns me with them is they also allowed 47 points. So we're going to see how they, fix things up defensively to continue their offensive onslaught with Jackson Latour, who's one of the quarterbacks. So we don't even talk much about who we need to. He had 5 touchdowns in that football game last week. And then Winter Park with Aaron Williams, the new quarterback transfer from Timber Creek. He put on a show, also had a couple touchdowns in that game with over 300 yards total offense. So we're going to see they're going to start to play some really good teams as well coming up here. I'm really excited about this. And we're only in week 2 talking about these controversies of rankings, which this is obviously why I love this show.
Yeah, and a couple more teams to talk about. We talk about Winter Park. Winter Park beats Lake Nona 30-6. Coach David Aubrey in his debut as the new head coach at Lake Nona. But Heritage, and this is another team we got to look out for. Heritage beat Satellite 40-0, Baylin. But West Orange, I think, is another team that's on the bubble here. They take care of business on Oak Ridge 41-6. We saw the highlights there. A lot of talent there. But I'm going to talk about another game. How about Horizon beating Freedom 42-27? Horizon was 7-3 last year, Baylin.
Yeah, and the Horizon lost pretty much their best players. They lost 3 guys over the summer, including their quarterback, who we talked about, went to Foundation. So, giving up 27 points for Freedom, that concerns me, honestly, to be honest. I mean, obviously they're scoring points, which is great, but, giving up, 27 points to a team like Freedom, which OCP pretty much blanketed when they played in their kickoff classic, 17-0. So, it's concerning, but we're going to see how those teams lined up. But I love that you brought up the team that you did just mention about West Orange. They have an opportunity this week to knock off Apopka. If Apopka does not find things offensively, this is the team that can hurt you offensively, and they can make a really big impact, which we have our predictions later on in this segment. But they're going to prove themselves as well. So I'm excited, and Horizon again. They will keep winning. Again, we talk about winning. They keep winning games, and they're only in their third year of a program, and they've got a lot of wins, which is very rare, which is exciting for that coaching staff. Obviously, that program, they're building it, especially in that area where they're going to lose kids to like teams like Dr. Phillips or Olympia, right? Even Windermere. So they're right there in that hunt, but they're winning games, Dan. But that 27 points of Freedom kind of concerns me.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Horizon, their running back had over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. All right, let's talk about the private school top 5. Bishop Moore stays the same. That was a close game against Edgewater.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's why they remain at number 1.
And Holy Trinity comes into the picture. They had a big game. Take out Cocoa Beach 44-14.
Brogan
Early
McNabb,
Brown, the head coach.
Yeah, Brogan McNabb. Remember that. He's also another 2026 quarterback that I trained. He had 6 total touchdowns in that football game. Look for them to make an impact early. He's got a couple Division I offers from Marshall, I believe Georgia Southern as well. So look for him to just completely dominate that area over there. And they're going to play some big matchups later on, which is going to prove themselves as the private school. And they're itching to get that number 1 spot. I think offensively they're going to do really good all year.
Yeah, Foundation Academy sits at number 3. Masters falls down to number 4, even though 0-1. And OCP falls to number 5, but they had a big win. But First Academy falls out of the top 5. Let's talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, so again, they got their first win for their coach, which is really exciting. But when you look at the top 5 that we have here, can they beat Bishop Moore? I don't think so. Can they beat Holy Trinity? Not going to happen. Foundation's rolling right now. They probably get blown out. Then you have Masters Academy, who put up 70 points in their first ever game with Coach Kruzik in their spring game, and then another 42 against Windermere Prep, only giving up 2 points. They played a pretty good team from out of state. I think they get blown out against Masters. Then OCP, which continues to prove themselves as winners. I don't see them losing anytime soon, and I believe they went head up. We know who'd probably win that game. So if you really look at it, almost like that Nick Saban mentality, if you match us up with any of these guys, even though Nick Saban had 2 losses last year in the college football playoff race, they were still probably the best team in the country, or at least the one that gave Georgia the run for their money, other than the other 3 that got in, especially when you talk about, we're not even talking about the team that got completely throttled in the college football playoff. But that's what it is. And, again, people are going to look at it, we're 1-0 and Masters 0-1. Well, look at the quality of opponents. And again, Jones sits at number 4, right? Well, look at the quality of opponent, right? That's why they still remain at the top. It's not because they're 0-1. Guys, if you play cupcakes every week and you go 10-0, that means absolutely nothing to us. You know why? Because you didn't prove anything. Yeah, you're beating the teams you're supposed to be. How about you beat a team that's pretty good? Then you prove yourself, just like why I say Lake Mineola is still number 1 in that area, regardless if Leesburg goes undefeated or regardless if Eustis starts winning games, which, again, they played each other this week, which is really intriguing. But at the end of the day, don't come knocking if you don't play good competition. So TFA, obviously, they're going to be a team we're going to talk about. Their head coach is 1-0 as a new head coach. But, again, if you match them up with our new top 5 teams, do they win any of these games, Dan? I don't believe so. Do you?
No, I think at the end of the day, they have a few more games to get under their belt. And like I said last week, a lot of these games are going to match up against each other. And I think that there's quite a bit of football to play out here. So if you're not seeing yourself in the top 10, play yourself in. All you have to do is knock one of these guys off. Yep. And anyway, listen, at the end of the day, this is all about fun. I mean, we can look at the college football top 20, and I guarantee you, a third of those guys won't even be it at the end of the season. So let's have some fun with it. Let's have some excitement.
Dan, you saw Swamp Kings, I assume, right on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Florida Gators in 2009 were arguably the best team, one of the best teams to ever step on the field. Yes, they didn't end the season well. They had a kind of a down year. They lost Alabama, and then in their bowl game got slaughtered. But at the end of the day, at that time, you're going to rank Ole Miss number 1 just because they beat Florida? No, they were 2-2 when they beat Florida. Florida was 4-0. They were looking to be 20-point favorites, and they got popped at home. So just because they beat Florida, now you put a 3-2 program at number 1 in the country? No, you got to earn your way up there. Yes, that hurts Florida, but at the end of the day, you're not going to put Ole Miss at 1. So just you got to think about that as we do rankings, or when people look at our rankings, like, guys, quality of opponents matter. You have to win top games, and you have to win consistently to get ranked.
All right, Baylin. Well, we got about 10 minutes left of the show, so let's get right into the predictions and look at week 2. And let's start with the private schools. You've got O'Galley coming over to play number 1 Bishop Moore, and the fan poll comes in. Bishop Moore wins 67%.
Yeah, this is a intriguing matchup. This is one of our top 5 games because of this. Ugali is one of the teams that we're probably going to end up talking about. If they beat Bishop Moore, look for them to really make a case to be in the top 10 because they are a public school. But they seem to be, a lot of people seem to talk about them on the East Coast, and I'm not really convinced yet. But if they beat a solid team like Bishop Moore this week, and I'm talking soundly, we're not talking close, which, again, that's what they're predicting. They keep talking about this East Coast team, Ugali. You got to watch them. They got a couple transfers, blah, blah, blah. Well, prove yourself against a Bishop Moore team that is battle-tested, that played Lake Mary, that played Edgewater. We're talking 2 of our top teams here in Central Florida, and they went, toe-to-toe defensively with both of those programs. So, I'm very curious to see how Ugali does against Bishop Moore. But I am going to go with the fans here. I'm still going to go Bishop Moore. I think Bishop Moore does win this football game. But again, like we just mentioned, if you want to prove yourselves to be a top-ranked team or a program to talk about, beat those guys. So Ugali, you have your opportunity right here in week 2, Dan.
And Holy Trinity, our number 2 team, is going to be playing Bayside.
Yeah, that's going to be a blowout. I think Holy Trinity completely blow out Bayside. I don't think it's close. I think that, again, Brogan McNabb lights it up this week, and they're going to continue offensively showing people why they're one of the best in the beach area as well. And Brogan McNabb, again, it's going to be a name you want to talk about. So I'm going to go Holy Trinity in a blowout.
All right, number 3 Foundation goes over to Cocoa Beach, and they got a young man named Kyler Coe they better be aware of.
Yeah, they're only going to be aware of it on paper, but I think that at the end of the day, they're going to get it done. And I'm looking for a big offensive explosion in this football game, and I don't think it's close, Dan.
Masters Academy has its 2nd team in a row come in from out of state as Cincinnati Hills Christian comes to town to Oviedo.
Yeah, I did some research on this football program. I am so excited for Masters. Again, I love what they're doing over there with all of their, coaching staff and the NFL, former players and stuff like that. But, after doing some research on this team coming in town, I don't think they have a problem with Masters. I think it's kind of the same deal as last week. I think Masters loses this football game. I hope they don't. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to make a prediction, I do think, based on the research that I've done with both these programs, they did lose last week, but I do think they come into Oviedo and they do have a lot of talent. I just think that they're a little too much power. But I am curious to see how Masters responds offensively this week.
All right, number 5 OCP goes to Kissimmee to take on Liberty and D. Hart.
Yeah, blowout. I think OCP wins this easily, and I don't think it's close. Just like last week, Toho put up 56 points on Liberty. I think OCP is going to be in that 30 range. I think it's going to be like 35-7, and the private school dominates the public school in this one.
All right, let's get right into the top 10. OC University, Orange City University, comes to Oviedo and takes on the Lions.
Yeah, I love that Chris Hayes is going to attend this football game. This is one of the out top 5 games that I would call this week. I do think Oviedo, again, scoring 60 points behind Jackson Latour. I think he's the name we're going to be talking about a lot this year when it comes to the Lions. But University Orange City, they're not no joke. So look for them to make a statement here. I believe this could be an upset. I am going to go with the Lions in this matchup. I still think offense, in my opinion, as a quarterback trainer, is going to trump defense just because they can score points. But this is going to be intriguing. Don't be surprised if there's an upset here, but I do like the Oviedo Lions in this matchup.
All right, Winter Park goes on the road, goes up to play Brunswick up in Georgia.
Yeah, on the road. This is a Thursday night game, so be looking for our Twitter feeds for updates on this one. I do think that Winter Park goes up there just like they did last year. They went up to Georgia and took care of business. I am going to represent Central Florida here and go with the Wildcats in this matchup. I think they beat a team that just got beat last week, so this is an opportunity for Winter Park to really showcase themselves and prove themselves to be one of the area's best, which is why now they're in our rankings. I do think Aaron Williams has a great game in the air and on the ground, and I think Winter Park takes care of business on the road.
All right, number 8, Wekiva goes over next door to play Ocoee.
Yeah, this was going to be very intriguing here. This is a good defensive battle. Can Ocoee continue to shut down quarterbacks that are dual threat like they did Tyson Davis in week 1? This is Tyree Davis. They're kind of similar in the way that they play with their legs and their arm, but I do think Tyree Davis is an elite talent at that position. I think that Wekiva, after their win against Olympia, have solidified themselves, and I think that they roll over Ocoee this week.
Another guy that doesn't come off the field, Sincere Edwards, the star defensive tackle, defensive end, but also plays tight end on that offense. All right, big game. West Orange goes to Apopka West Orange knocked off Apopka last year, Baylin.
They did, but behind Trevor Jackson, the new Ole Miss commit, who's now at Jones High School, now they got a new quarterback in town, Jack Riley, a kid that I trained that just moved here with their whole entire family from Chicago. Look for this to be an upset, Dan. I'm excited about this. West Orange is going to prove themselves offensively. Apopka is going to showcase if they're really the real deal on defense. But I am still going with the Apopka Blue Darters in this matchup. You got to go with them until they get beat. I think that they're the better football team from top to bottom. I think Apopka wins this game, but don't be surprised again if there's an upset. This is one of our top 5 games this week, Dan, and I'm looking forward to this matchup and this rivalry.
And the fan poll picks Apopka 79%. Number 5, Edgewater. This is the game of the week. Clearwater Academy International comes to town and plays the Edgewater Eagles.
Yeah, I'm going all Eagles with this one. I know CAI plays a national schedule, and they played some juggernauts. I mean, we're talking Columbus, where they're up 21-0, and then the week before they played a powerhouse in Homestead. But I think Edgewater takes this game, and I think that this is the breakout game that we're looking for Michael Clayton to have.
And I'll tell you what, fan poll 77% Edgewater, but I think it's going to be very well attended. That stadium is going to be packed. All right, number 4, Jones goes to Maryland and plays Our Lady of Good Counsel. They were on ESPN last week, Baylin.
They sure were, and they got blown out 28-7. I'm going to take the Tigers in this matchup. I think they bounce back. I think Coach Elijah Williams is going to have a longer week than the good counsel lady or whatever you want to call them. I think that Jones is going to go up there and go to Maryland and handle business with the speed that we have. And if they start Darion Coleman or Trevor Jackson, whichever one that they go with, which I'm leaning towards Darion, they're going to light it up this week and get the W and bring it back to Central Florida.
All right, number 3, Cocoa hosts Venice. Venice loses to Armwood last week. Venice is one of the top teams in the state.
They sure are, but Cocoa is one of the best in the state as well. And I think I'm going with the upset here. I'm going Cocoa wins this game. I saw them beat Jones High School, which is why I'm giving them the edge. I love Brady Hart. I love what they're doing offensively. I love Coach Franco. I love Coach Snyder. I think they don't lose this football game at home. I think Venice, there's a lot going on right now. I think they were depleted last week. They were down 27-0 to Armwood in the first half. I think they got to figure things out. They're also the transfer portal team on the West Coast, just like Olympia is here in Central Florida. And I think a Cocoa Tigers take care of business.
And the Osceola Cowboys lose a heartbreaker to Treasure Coast last week, 22-8. Seminole continues to roll. This is a big game.
It's a big game on paper, but Seminole blows out Osceola, I think, and it's not even close, Dan. Honestly, I love Osceola and what they're doing, but there's some missing pieces there, and I think until they get everybody together and healthy, I don't think they beat a Seminole team that's ready to prove themselves and why they're number 2 in our rankings. So I look for Carson to have a great day and David to have a good day. The receiver, Kelly, we're not even talking about him yet. Wait till he starts getting in the mix. I think it's going to be Seminole, Bokie Town all day Friday night when it comes to this matchup.
All right, fan polls got them winning at 91%. And then you've got North Broward heading to Daytona Beach, heading up 995 to play the Buccaneers.
This game won't even be close. Another blowout. I think Mainland proved themselves last week. And again, they're a good football team and had nothing to do with coaching, which I don't know where that narrative came from, just because I mentioned Darlington one time in a prediction. It had nothing to do with better coaching. But I think Mainland is well coached, and I think they win this game. I think it's 40-0 pretty much. I think it's going to be a complete blowout.
I'll tell you what, last thoughts, Baylin. We got about 30 seconds. Go ahead, Baylin.
Okay.
Your last thoughts. Final thoughts.
Look for some good football. Prayers, everybody, with the hurricane. I hope everybody made it through safely, and we'll look forward to more football. Go Canes on Friday night.
All right, I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo. You have watched a Central Florida High School Scoreboard show. We'll see you every Wednesday night. New episode, 6 o'clock.